Welcome to Fortuna's How to Ace Your Round Applications to Stanford GSB and Wharton. Really excited to have you all with us. We have a great for this evening's session, and we're excited. So I think we're going to get started and wanted to just give you a sense of who's going to be with you this evening. I'm Judith Silverman Hodara. I'm a Fortuna co-founder and director of the program, and I was the former acting director and senior associate at Wharton MBA Admissions. Really happy to be with us. A couple of my colleagues, Scott Brownlee, Karla Cohen, and Rachel Erickson. And if you could just briefly introduce yourselves, that would be wonderful.
My name is Karla Cohen, obviously, and I worked at Harvard Business School for almost 5 years, and I primarily worked in the doctoral programs office, but I also worked with the MBA Admissions team. I helped with applications and interviews, and it was a great experience. And since 2018, I've been with Fortuna.
Really glad you're here. Welcome, Scott Brownlee, who's with us from Austin, Texas.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Scott Brownlee. I'm ex-Wharton Admissions, so spent some time in admissions there while my partner at the time, now wife, did her MBA, and I've also been a career coach for MBA students at the University of Texas. So when we get to the Q&A, if you have any career-related questions, we can do those as well. But great to be here.
Wonderful. Hi. And dialing in from New York, Rachel Erickson.
Yeah, so I went to Stanford Business School and then was an alumni interviewer for many years at Stanford. Also have a background where I worked in publishing. And for the past 5 years, I have been working with Fortuna clients, helping them with their applications.
Well, we're really delighted to spend the evening all having just finished round one. We're almost at the tail end of round one. We are gearing up for round two. So to give everyone on the call tonight a sense of our agenda for this evening, we're going to be answering a number of very important questions. We're going to start out. What we're going to do tonight, though, is not leave the slides up. I am going to be asking a question and then turning it over to our panelists. So you're not staring at the questions, you're actually getting a chance to see what we're all about. So we're going to answer these questions that you see in front of you. And Scott, if you want to, we can just go back to full screen view. And I'm going to start with Karla and Rachel. What are the pros and cons of applying in round two? That is a question I get a lot. There's lots of mythology out there about round one versus round two. So Karla, do you mind starting with that? And then Rachel, turn.
No problem. This is a great question. There's a number of misconceptions about. There's a number of people that think that applying round one gives you an automatic advantage. This is false. This is not true. Whereas I do think that there are advantages in the sense that you will, potentially hear sooner. That's not always the case. There's something called deferrals that can happen. But one of the reasons people apply early, especially in the consulting sector, is so that they can get their answers sooner and plan their lives. They knew that they were going to be going. Many of them are sponsored. So you would expect to see a significant portion of the applications coming in from that sector round one. But the truth is that business schools pay attention to patterns and trends, and they know very well that, whether it's 65% of the applications come in round one, they also allocate volume accordingly. So, proportionately, there's no inherent advantage. The thing that you have to keep in mind, and I think the simplest way to think about it, is when is your application at its strongest? So it does not make sense to rush things if you don't have the score that you want in terms of being competitive for the programs that you're targeting. It does not make sense to just force it. That only puts you at a disadvantage. And I've had situations where people rushed and then they submitted and then they were deferred to a later round. So they're not even hearing any earlier, and they could have had months more to prepare and to polish their different essays and things like that. So it is something that make sure that not just with this question, but with others, that you talk to folks who've been on the other side of the table and who are in the know with respect to what is true and what isn't. This assumption is rarely challenged, and it's something that I often have to spend a lot of time talking to people about, that you're just going to shoot yourself in the foot if you force it early. You may be ready, in which case go for it. Then you hopefully will hear sooner. I think Harvard is the one program that does more of the deferrals. We'll see what happens this year under the newish director. So, but in the past, that was problematic. So hopefully that's helpful.
So I just wanted to jump in and
Thank
talk a little
you.
bit about Stanford.
Please.
And Karla, what you were saying about deferrals. So Stanford does not defer people to round two, but they will waitlist people. And some of those people from round one who got waitlisted, they've gone through the interview process, which is different from Harvard, where they are deferred to an interview. The interview is also deferred. But sometimes those people who applied in round one also get waitlisted, and then they get in off the waitlist in round two. I completely want to reiterate what Karla said. You apply when you are going to have your best application, and do not jump the gun if you don't have that ready yet. And also, you need to think about, did you just get a new job? Are you working on a really big project at work? As Karla mentioned, the GMAT or the GRE, are you not at your ideal score? Or did you just not get your act together and write a really good, compelling, tight application? That's the most important thing. I also wanted to just mention a little bit where Karla was talking about the round one is going to be slightly heavier with consulting and finance people. And then round two is going to be a little bit more diverse. There's going to be a little bit more of a variation in those backgrounds. But this doesn't mean if you're a great candidate and you're a consultant or finance person and you're applying in round two, you are still going to be a great candidate. They are very careful to look for consistency between the rounds and between the applicants. And that's where if they feel one round is stronger or weaker, they will go back to their wait lists to ensure that continuity.
And I would add that I think that's something for a candidate, you don't necessarily believe that case, but that, admissions officers are really building this beautiful community that's going to be together for 2 years. And it's not a science, as you all know, it is very much an art. And it's taking the time and going back and iterating. I really want a message to be clear to everybody tonight that it's not necessarily finishing first that's going to get you admitted. It's when you're ready, finishing in your own pace. Scott's nodding, I think, because it's hard to believe that, oh, everybody else is applying at the same time, and I really need to get it in now. And we're talking to a lot of people who really are ready now for round two, and they weren't ready 3 weeks ago. Right. So if you get one thing from us tonight, it's very much to hold still for a minute and really take a pulse on what you feel is the best pace for your own process. I'm going to talk to Scott a little bit about timeline. And Scott, if you were applying now, you're just starting out, what do you think would a timeline look like in terms of application process, or what are some of the things that candidates might be thoughtful about?
Sure, Judith. Thanks for that question. I'll go ahead and throw my notes for this in the chat, just so everyone has a little structure if you're a structured thinker. But I think 3 months is kind of the sweet spot. When we work with clients, that tends to be a sweet spot. But I think if you're applying on your own as well, same truth would hold. Month one is usually actually about research and actually and kind of preparing to apply as opposed to jumping right into your essays, right? Because as you do that, you might change your school list. You also need to line up your rec letters as early as possible. That takes a lot of time. Every year I have clients that are chasing their recommender around at the 11th hour, and they still reached out to them months and months before and worked with them to kind of get alignment. So definitely give yourself enough time to get that part of the process completed. Usually I recommend, actually, after you've done some of that research and really thinking about your career and how you fit into the different schools you're applying to, that's when you actually put pen to paper and start drafting essays. And the first set of essays you do will take the longest. Of the schools we're talking about today, the Stanford essays will probably take you the most time. Harvard has changed, obviously, from the open-ended essay to a more structured one, which Karla will talk more about. But the first essay set always takes longer. So just know that if you're tired at the end of your drafts for school one, you will be better at this by school three and school four, and certainly beyond that. And then month three, once you're kind of through the main gauntlet, I always recommend clients and folks that are applying in general to connect with current students and alums. I don't think you can really do too much of this. It's pretty hard to actually get 3 or 4 people per school on the phone. So I'll usually tell people, shoot for 2, right? You'll get some different perspectives on the schools, and you can deploy what you learn from those people, not only in your written application, maybe you actually reference something that you learned, but when you get to the interview round, which will be fast and furious, and you won't have time to do info chats with people, you'll be ready to go, right? You'll feel more secure when you talk to that alum of the school, having talked to some alums and students already. So that's kind of my 3-month plan of action there, Judith.
Great, thank you so much. And I think, you're going to talk to a lot of people if you're applying in round 2 who say, oh, I worked on it for 6 months or 9 months. Like, all projects expand to the time allotted. And so with 3 months, you really need to be very efficient. Karla is laughing because she knows this to be true. Yes, we start working with people in February sometimes, and sometimes we don't need that much time. So I think, our job is to help to allay your fears and concerns about, am I going to get done by January 3rd? And the answer is slow and steady every day. You're working through it. This is not a mad dash. And that's really our job, is to hold your hand if you want it held, and to have you feel like, yes, this is possible. And every week you're making more progress. So I want to turn our attention, if I can, to the essay questions. And Karla, do you mind just kicking us off? What are the schools looking to learn from the essays for HBS? I also want to give a little advertisement here. Please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box. We'll be happy to answer them a little bit later on in tonight's discussion.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about that before we do. So I'll let you move forward, but I did want to just double click on a few things that my colleague said, Rachel.
Yes, please. Oh, I like that. Double click. I think that's very cool. I've never heard it. I'm going to use it. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm trying to channel my corporate self. But I think that's absolutely true. Everything that was said. And I think the one thing that I wanted to add is that we can do the sprints. It's not ideal, but the relationship between time spent on the application does not equal success necessarily. It makes it easier. It makes it less stressful. And so, ideally, whether it's 3 months or, there have been folks that started, believe it or not, as long as it's in before the deadline. And in some cases that has been, I think, a week sprint on some. There was a client from Saudi Arabia who was incredible running the technology, and he got into Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton, and he did not get into MIT Sloan on his own the first round, which is how he landed in my lap, which was wonderful. And so that was a sprint, and that's not what we would recommend, but it is, sometimes things change and you want to get, your application in. Life is, messy and complicated at times. So you have to adapt to that. And we do as well. So I just wanted to highlight that was, there's a lot of anxiety, I think, too, within individuals if you don't start 6 months or 3 months, or, and so there's many different ways. My mom always said this and it never made sense, but to slice this apple, and now I use it all the time. So there's many different ways to slice this apple. But the core part is just getting down to what we'll talk about next, which is the essays. So Harvard did change its essays. They were already tight when they switched it to the 900 words, and then they've trimmed it even further. So they've taken away, as did Stanford. Everyone's trying to be, feels like punishment sometimes, but it is difficult. But what happened with the HBS essays is that they became more businessy focused. You've got, some that talk about leadership, and they're very short and they're specific about the word counts. But the purpose of this is to focus individuals, but don't be fooled that they don't want to hear the more personal side of things too. So while the questions are very, I don't mean to insult whoever wrote these questions, but they're not as exciting as the more open-ended one, which does give you more free reign. You still have liberties that you can use, that you can bring in a lot of the things that, might surface in the process of what we do, which is really getting to know individuals' strengths, your core competitive assets, but also what makes you different, what's going to make you stand out. I think with the new Harvard essays, it's going to be very easy for a lot of people to just disappear into this brochure-like candidate, where you're asleep, by the time you get to the third essay, and it's like, this is nothing exciting. So the effort is really to try to think about, what are the things that have helped form you? Fundamentally, what they want to see is community engagement, appetite, aptitude, and leadership, which comes in many different shapes and sizes, and it doesn't just show up in the essays. So Rachel can talk a lot about this. It's similar to Stanford in the sense that you have many other opportunities to do the more businessy, not that that's boring. I mean, we're in the business of business schools here, but it can be dull if you allow it to be. I've seen many presentations that are death by PowerPoint. So there's many opportunities for things to get really dull, but you don't want to be that person. You have to tell the truth, and you want to focus on the things that are unique to you, and we help draw those out and then connect them to, how is it relevant? Like, did your ability to lead teams come from different parts of your life as, maybe athletics, maybe you've overcome some personal challenges and you've really had to steel yourself in different ways to become resilient. That's relevant. And so there's opportunities even within the first essay has 300 words and then the other two have 250, but there's opportunities even within those to bring out what you will discover if you're working on the Stanford application, which is, I still think one of the most interesting questions to be asked at, the average age is 25, which is what matters most to you and why? And how does that connect to the business of business schools? Does that, is that something that's going to be furthered? So there are elements in there that you're the same person applying to all of these schools. And so there can be some synergies in terms of what you pull over. And I would recommend starting with Stanford first. You climb Mount Everest first, and then you can sail down. And then when you get to Wharton, not that it's easy, but it's, it's different. It's definitely different in terms of, pouring your heart and soul out to them. Although Wharton does want to hear and get to know you too. But the point is that there's many different ways to approach this question, and there's many opportunities. You're the only person who's lived your life. And to work with a consultant who can help draw that out and identify things that are going to be interesting to the committee, because it might not seem so. You've lived your life. So it's not that people always ask me, what's it like to be a twin? I'm like, what's it like not to be a twin? I have a twin brother. So I don't know the other thing, but it's easier for us to identify that's actually very interesting. And this shows where you want to show, you don't want to just tell them, I'm great at leadership. I'm also really humble. You don't want to be that person, right? You want to show them what you've been through, what you've learned, and how that's relevant, and what that's going to bring to the classroom. The other thing that's interesting too is that a lot of people try to just polish themselves up to be these flawless candidates. Flawless isn't real, nor is it interesting. You want to be able to show.
That is so true. That is so true.
It's so true. And it's like, if you haven't been through anything, if you're just like, everything worked out perfectly, everything that I always knew exactly what I wanted to do and it all worked out, it's like, oh God, what's going to happen when it doesn't? Because that's not really how life works, So it doesn't feel like you're able to connect with the person if it's only these like, everything was always so intentional, because as we all know through the pandemic, none of us saw that coming, right? So you have to be able to show when things get complicated, as they will, if you're going to be, operating in the high stakes world of, leading businesses and creating and influencing industries, like you're going to have to know how to adapt. So you want to show them, tell a story that shows, brings them into the moment. I love the use of dialogue because it wakes you up. It like brings you into the moment. Not that it needs to be a screenplay, but you can weave in some tools that I think will enliven your story and your approach that won't make you disappear into the other, wallflower like candidates that are just, they don't stand out. They don't stick with you. So think about the stories that, that in the different milestones in your life, where have you had to change? Where have you faced difficult decisions and, or had to overcome difficulties that you didn't even know you're capable of overcoming? That's really interesting because that shows the school you're going to bring a story. The war stories are the ones that you learn things from. So not that it all has to be, it's not a competition for who's had the most tragic existence at all, but it's more about you can't get through life without struggle. And so what do you learn from that? And how does that help other people? And it can come from very different parts of your life that may be unexpected, but you want to tell the truth. You don't have to tell the whole truth at all times to everyone. So we help you with those boundaries around this is appropriate to convey these pieces of information. And then we help you with the shaping of those stories and squishing it in sometimes to the word. It can be its own sort of, struggle and challenge that I could write essays about. But anyway, I hope that's helpful. Similarly, I'll let my colleague take Rachel. I think you'll talk about Stanford, but they're looking for authenticity at the end of the day. They want something real. They want something that's believable. And the two questions that I always ask myself when reading an application is it true and does it make sense? It's hard to impress these schools with these, illustrious stories. They might be amazing to you, but they've seen everything. So what's hard is being real and honest. I don't really know exactly what I want to do. I might go in this pathway or this pathway, and I've researched it. I've like played the tape forward. So that kind of stuff can be helpful.
Yeah, so Stanford, you mentioned, Karla, the what matters most to you and why, which is their sort of infamous / famous question. I think it's a great question because what they're actually asking is, who are you? Which is really the most fundamental question of all. And then their second question, why Stanford, is asking, who do you want to be when you grow up? And so between the two of these questions, I think they're expecting you to think about your whole life and what you have been up till this date, and then what do you want your life to be going forward. And as Karla said, honesty is really the best policy. I want to mention a little bit because Stanford's essays are very different from Harvard's. Harvard's now are much more business oriented. They used to be more closely aligned. And Stanford pretty clearly wants you to talk about your accomplishments and focus the work on the application. They have places for it there. They don't want to hear in the actual essay a story about all of the great things that you've done and accomplished and the fantastic impact that you've had. That is not what they're asking you for. They're asking you to be personal, to tell a real story that helps them understand who you are, what you're like, what you will be when you show up on campus, what motivates you, what drives you, those deeper questions. So it is actually a slightly different approach from Harvard's. One of the other things that Karla mentioned is that honesty. And, I'm just going to say these essays, they say self-reflection, and everybody always rolls their eyes. And I've had so many clients who say, wow, I really didn't realize I'd be doing this much self-reflection for my essays. And boy, I've had to think about a lot of stuff. And it happens again and again because the good essays really force you to define who you are, what are the characteristics and the traits that make you unique and, that really capture the essence of who you are. Another thing Karla said that I want to reiterate is the adage, show, don't tell. Please do not tell me you have empathy. I mean, I see that all the time. Oh, and I showed empathy for, and I'm like, oh my God, you can't say that. Show me by telling me a story about a time when you clearly demonstrated empathy. And then the other thing I would say is that you don't need to tell everything, but what you do say needs to be honest. It needs to be sincere. It needs to be true to you. And I so often find people falling into the trap of saying what they think the admissions committee wants to hear. And so I'll read an essay and it'll say, well, I want to help millions of people around the world with their blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you're a finance person who wants to go into investing. This is just not realistic or believable. Instead, talk about what you actually want to do as an investor, how excited you are to work with these companies, what you plan to do, what areas you are interested in investing in, because that's real, that's believable, that's who you are, and that's not going to turn off the admissions committee. Another example of something that I'll read is, people say, oh, my passion for financial modeling. And I'm just like, you cannot say passion and financial modeling in the same sentence because it just does not pass the smell test. But you could explain what you like about financial modeling. So my point is that there are these subtleties and nuances, and this is something that when you work with a coach, we can help you with, where bringing it back to what is honest and true to you and finding the reality and not trying to oversell yourself and make things sound like more than they are is incredibly important in capturing and making for a good essay. And I just want to read, because I do want to briefly touch on the Why Stanford essay, because that's another important one. And the first thing I want to say there is why Stanford is not asking just why Stanford, it's asking for your career vision implicitly as well, because you can't explain why you want to go to business school if you don't have a good, thoughtful career vision laid out. And then the second thing that I see people mistaking all the time is they'll start going on and on about all the amazing courses and all the amazing programs at the school. So I'm just going to read a sentence. I plan to develop my decision-making skills in Class X, where I will learn how to lead a team through high-stakes environments, adapt my communication style to suit the audience, and define a vision amidst uncertainty. And like when you first read that, that sounds like, oh, that's a nice sentence. But if you think about what it says nothing about who you are as a person. And it is actually literally just kind of repeating what the course catalog says with your own words. You need to instead bring it back to where do you need to grow? Where are your areas of weakness? Where are there skills that you need? And every sentence should share something about you with the reader, not something about the school. So that's kind of just in a nutshell, taking you through the Stanford essay application. And I know Scott now can talk a little bit about Wharton and theirs, because it's a really fun, interesting, and very different approach.
It's a
Thank you
super
so much.
different.
And we should also mention that Rachel, in her previous, so I think that brings that to the for sure. And I love it. At the face, it's a great sentence, right? But then if you peel it back, and now we're going to talk to Scott, who is a poet in addition to many other talents. Scott, why don't you tell us a little bit about the poetry of the Wharton essays?
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, for better or worse, Wharton is quite different from Stanford. I think it's actually almost like an opposite reflection, because if you look at those prompts, and I'm a big fan of close reading. So when you read a prompt, like really read Wharton's prompt about your career, and really read Wharton's prompt about essay 2, which is about how you will give back to Wharton. They're Wharton focused, right? And so you've done all this internal work, you've written from the heart for Stanford. What I think Wharton is trying to have you do is actually locate your future experience. Imagine what you're going to be like and what you're going to do in the Wharton classroom. Imagine what you're going to be like and what you're going to do as an alum of the school. Imagine how you're going to give back to the Philadelphia community when you're based in Philly while going to school, right? Something that Wharton always points out to folks is that it's situated in a city, right, in Philadelphia, which is a really thriving place where you can engage off campus. So I think when you're approaching those Wharton essays, you actually have to take a step back. You have to be very efficient in telling Wharton about what your career goal is, explaining that. Vignettes are a great way to do it. I'm a big fan of, like Karla said, dialogue is great, because when you read maybe 10 or 15 applications a day, that's being generous, people probably read more. It's nice to have a little variation and just like a little recorded speech. But I think what Wharton is looking for is for you to connect the dots on a pretty deep level about how Wharton can actually plug in your career and make things happen beyond kind of the obvious. Like Wharton is a finance school. This Wharton professor in this Wharton class will help me get a job, right? You need to go. The metaphor I like to use is, it feels like the ocean. That's like the waves, right? You need to go down where the scuba divers are at 30, 40 meters, and really connect the dots for your specific story to Wharton. And what that means is that you need to think about Wharton dimensionally. And by dimensionally, I mean, don't just think about academics. Don't just think about kind of the social component and the kind of the cultural side of that. Don't just think about career, right? Just don't think about like the recruiting you're going to do. Kind of, where do all those intersect, and can you find specific things that you're referencing that Wharton can help you with for all of those? And I think this translates for essay 1 and essay 2. In essay 2, you're asked to really focus on what you'll give back to the Wharton community. And it's a hard question. You have to do some research to get to know that community first. That goes back to my advice around talking to current students and alums. I think more than other schools, maybe even, it's very important to get to know what that culture is like on the ground. The only way to do it, right, beyond the website, is to really talk to people and see where you would fit. Like what clubs could you do a co-sponsored event with, and what time of year, and kind of that specificity. Coming in with that when those essays is really important, because Wharton expects a student that is self-sufficient. They can kind of chart their own vision and then plug into other people who also kind of have that mindset. So it kind of the exact opposite of the other schools, but in a good way, right? I think it still makes you think and pushes you to kind of get outside of your own head and think about how you're going to connect uniquely to the school.
One quick thing, if I can add something, Judith.
Sure. No, this is great. I love it when people jump in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that, the key thing that both Rachel and Scott were talking about, which is so important, is specificity. Be specific. You don't want to just talk about the tight-knit community and the interdisciplinary learning. Why does that matter? You want to anchor it in how that's going to help catalyze your success. The other thing that Scott said that is so important, and it is low-hanging fruit, that I'm always surprised, and I'm like, try to adapt to my pitch to talk to people who are there. You can reach out to them. We have clients, there's a vast network of individuals, and it makes everything so much easier. You can get to that specificity, and you can also show them that you're resourceful, and that if you want to learn about this school, it shows them that you're actually interested. It's like everyone can attend an information session. Many people do, and they're not even paying attention. They're like, I did all of them and I don't know anything. What do I need to know? It doesn't actually help you. But if you have a conversation with someone around, like, how does someone like me, or talk to your friends, start with, like, you don't have to do all these cold emails. Start with like a warm email, to a friend who may be there, or someone who knows someone. And if you don't have an immediate network of individuals, perhaps someone in your, undergraduate alumni network went there. And that's like, it's not necessarily a cold email, but that impresses them. I reached out to so-and-so and they immediately responded and we're so excited to talk about this and this and this and this. And that is exactly kind of what I'm looking for. And you can be very specific, and also you can enrich the content. You know, Rachel was talking about like, you need to show up. They don't want to hear about themselves. The last thing I want to mention is that Harvard is the one program amongst these two that never asks you why Harvard. It was quite funny when I got there. I was like, why do you not, does that not? And they're like, we get it. You know, like we know, we don't need to be educated about the case method. We are aware that it works. Like, they're not interested in hearing about themselves. They know already. They don't know you. And so, you know, whether the attitude is more of like, who doesn't want to be here? You know, a lot of people want to, they know, they don't reward reverence. They reward authenticity, and they want to get to know you. And so that's the key piece that I think, you know, it feels like they almost like push back on like, do I need to not like throw in my little pitch that's very similar to these other schools? And I'm like, trust me, no, they don't want to hear it. As soon as I would see that paragraph come up, I'm like, I'm done. I know exactly what's going to be said. And it doesn't give me anything new. What's interesting is you can use it now that the real estate is so tight in this area with the Harvard essays, is that like, you really want to be intentional about what are you showcasing? And then also to just, you know, further to Rachel's point, there's so many other opportunities. Many people don't spend enough time on the short answer part of the question. And what I mean by that is the employment section, describing your company, describing your role. So many people don't spend, they just like, there was literally one client that I talked to, and he's like, well, everyone in our firm always uses this is the same thing. And I'm like, I mean, so you're getting in, you don't imagine that you might be getting in spite of this, but it is not what they want to see, the same thing over and over.
Very interesting. And
yeah,
we're going to talk about that, because there are a lot of real estate, you know, places that you can have your own personality, your own story to come through. And I also want to, Karla was talking ways to reach out. Somebody asked a question in the chat, you know, what do I cold call people on LinkedIn? Everybody knows somebody that knows somebody. And I generally, we're going to answer this a little bit more, but it's really important to do your homework before you apply, because those conversations are going to really help you explain why it is that this is a particularly good fit for you, or how yourself there. And, you know, everybody's looking on those websites and everything looks terrific. You're going to graduate with jobs that are going to pay you $250,000 a year, because that's what you're being told on the, and, you know, generally speaking, so your job as you go through this as an applicant is to really understand, how does this apply to me? Who are these, and why is this particularly good institution for me? I'm going to turn the question. Go ahead, Rachel. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, one last thing on top of that, which is that all three of these schools, even though they're asking very, very different questions, you still have to know exactly who you are and what you bring to the community. Like for Wharton, you know, you shouldn't just talk about a random club. It needs to be a club or an activity that is meaningful to you, and you need to explain why. And same with, what are you like in the classroom, and how does that relate to how you have been at work or in other experiences? So that is the common thread. Like, you know yourself, know what you have to offer, know what you bring, and make sure that you communicate that to all three of these schools.
Karla, I'm going to kiss back to you to talk about what are schools looking forward to reading about in a recommendation letter. You've had a lot of direct ad experience with HBS. So can you kind of talk us through what recommendation, and again, for most of these schools, they're going to be fairly similar recommendation questions, with the exception of Wharton, because Wharton needs to do things a little bit differently. Scott, I don't know if you're responsible for writing those recommendation questions, but I have a word to say to you if that case was the fact. Why'd you guys do that?
I take it personally now.
I do take it very personally, and I was long gone before they changed it, so I'm responsible. So Karla, can you talk directly about what schools are looking to learn from recommenders?
Yeah, and this is another great opportunity that people don't spend enough time on. You know, Scott mentioned like finding the right people. You need to find people who are going to be advocates for you. One way to kind of test the waters is there's obviously certain situations, you know, if you're outside of consulting or outside of a, you know, private equity tends to have people 2 or maybe 3 years and then push them out. And so it's expected that you would leave, but other companies are not that excited to lose you. And so it might not be wise to let them know that you're not going to be around. That might affect your bonus. Business schools understand this. And so when you're thinking about who, ideally, it's someone who's seen you in the professional setting and can speak to your strengths and how you're distinctive. And this is so critical. It's not about like, what did you do? I've seen so many, I've done a lot of the ding analysis where it's like, almost always I'll see a great, and I'm like, I want to see the letters first. If you have any access to them, or if those were shared with you, or any insight, or can I see what you shared with them? The key piece here is not what you did, but why does it matter that you did these things? Because I'll look at, so many individuals who are like, and then you did this, and then you did this, and then you did this, and then you did this. And I'm like, is that just your job? Or is that exceptional? And why does that matter? And so you need to find individuals that are going to get that nuance and be able to speak to, here are some key strengths, and here's how they showed up, and here was the impact. This is why this person has been able to, Harvard fundamentally, I think, wants individuals who, whatever they engage is better for their presence. And so how did you make this place better? How did you make the team better? How did you build morale? How did you diffuse tense situations? There's a lot of politics that can happen in different business settings, like especially also in academia too, but that's another story. So the key thing is like, what was your impact really? And to anchor it too, be very specific, especially with the first question, which is around, like, how does this person compare? It's ideal if they can, give context for that. This person is one of the best that I've ever seen in terms of, and you don't have to be the best at everything. Again, focus on what's actually true. You don't have to be the all-star. If you have one core spike, as a lot of folks at Stanford like to say, then focus on that. Why is that your thing? And what is the impact of that thing on the organization and teams? Does it make them more efficient? Does it make them more productive? And you may not always be able to connect that to the bottom line, but you will be able to connect it to like, you've won people over because your strengths show up in terms of making things better for the organization somehow. And so you want to find individuals who are aware of those things, that have credibility, that are more senior than you. They talk about the relationship and they want you to describe that because they want to make sure that it's not your buddy who's sitting next to you. That's hard to take seriously, and also past performance is a great indicator of future potential. And so people that are in high positions of authority are often very good at assessing what are the key, do I see seeds of greatness here? And what are those? Then the second question was the one that I would always go to try to understand, do I take all the stuff seriously in the first question? Because if I get something, pardon my French here, if it's lame, if it's like, I don't know, they are just always at the office. The critical feedback that I had to share was to go home sometime, because you can't just be married to your job. Like, that's not interesting. That doesn't actually tell me anything about the individual. What I want to know is, when did you get feedback that you then took in, hopefully without being super defensive, although there are some cases in which, maybe being defensive shows, your backbone, who knows? But it's important to be honest and specific there. So someone who's been able to give you feedback that you've been able to act on, and then what changed? If you're perfect, you're not real, or you're not needing business school. So it's not interesting. They want to see growth. They want to see, because like any investment, they're looking to invest in, give you a seat to someone with high upside. And if there's no delta, if there's no change, not very interesting. I want to see someone who came in. One of the best letters that I read was, basically someone who was, I think it was one of the top banks, was like, wow, when we first got this person in the room, it was like, who hired this person? This is a major mistake. And not that it has to be the story, but 2 years later, it's like they're operating like a VP. It was a totally different person. And so being able to like get feedback, and what is the most, important critical feedback that you shared, how did they receive it? Be specific. And how did they change as a result? Don't be afraid to have them actually tell something that did change you, because then I'm able to believe all the good stuff. If you're saying something lame, like, I told them my advice was go to business school. What do I learn about you? Nothing. Are you going to be able to come into this program and then be rocket launched onto your next level? I have no idea, because I don't really have any valuable information here. So they want detailed information that is going to help them get a sense of, are you going to come into this program and also be changing and getting better and improving? And can you take input and feedback? And is that part of, something that you do? Are you solicitous of it? So there's a lot that's embedded in that, recommenders do think they're doing you a favor when they give you these like lighthearted, it's like it's not a throwaway question. It's there for a reason. And it is, if it's answered honestly, and it just feels real, like the specificity will tell you, it's like, oh, I can feel that feedback must have been a little bit uncomfortable. And they can even say, this was not a comfortable conversation, or it's easy to give this person feedback. There's not a right or wrong. Whatever the situation is, that can help you in terms of both standing out. And that's really kind of like, it just feeds back into the application. And then the last thing I want to say is that it's hard to talk about all of your accomplishments, especially, and you don't have much space in the essays. Let your recommenders do that. Let them brag about your successes. And then you look all humble over here because you're not focused on, look at all that I did, because other people notice it. It was important to them and it had an impact, and it's valuable information. So this is, again, part of the show versus tell. Let them sell you in terms of those assets. That's appropriate and that's interesting and it has more weight. And then if you can do those things, which is actually harder than you think, you need to make sure that your recommender understands what they're looking for, because this is lost on even people that have done a lot of research. So this is a key thing that you can use to your advantage. Prepare them, give them information, because everybody's busy, and help them understand kind of like what are the key things that you want to focus on that are real and true, and that it's okay to be honest here. Be totally brutally honest about what happened and how I changed and how I'm showing this growth mindset, and that I am someone who can take feedback. Everybody can use it. Everyone can improve. So it shouldn't be that there's never either. If you're like, well, I never had to give them feedback, they were wonderful at all times. It's like, well, either you're a terrible manager or you're a liar. I mean, neither are good. So it doesn't help you. So you want to find people who, and the way to do that, I think one simple way is to ask them, can you give me, when you're asking them, think about applying to business school. So don't commit right away, because it's super awkward if you end up not going to them. But read them when you ask a question of like, do you feel comfortable writing me a strong letter of recommendation? And their reaction will tell you everything. If they're like, oh, I don't know, I might not push that further. If they're like, I've been waiting for you to ask me, I'm so honored, is a different situation. So then you know that you've got someone in your camp. And then, work with your consultant, work with your coach to figure out what are the key things that this person has witnessed, what do we want to focus on, and just make it easier. You want to help facilitate this for them because it's a huge deal. Many people, like, letters of recommendation don't get you in, but they keep people out all the time. All the time. This is the one key thing that will filter out tons of individuals. So it's not about saying like, what's the best example? Nobody really cares about the example so much as like, why did it matter? And so think about the things that you did that have impact. And I mean, I could care less if it's like this massive deal that you worked on doesn't really mean anything to me and probably won't to the reader. But what does matter is how does that show us who you are? And how does that make you a more interesting candidate that we are confident will bring a lot to the table if admitted?
Thank you so much. We get a lot of questions about recommendations, and I'm just so glad to have this amazing team to talk about the differences and the nuances. We're going to move on to Rachel, who's going to speak about the supplemental form and the resume. I think that there's so many, not the supplemental form, I should say the application form itself. GSB is well known, the fact that it's in there, and I know this frequently will call me the night before it's due and say, oh my gosh, I had no idea. So Rachel, can you talk a bit about that? Take your hand right away from your face, like, oh my gosh, this is a lot. We all hold our heads when we see it, and also how the resume fits into the evaluation. So thank you for running us through that.
Sure. So when you say that, first of all, to your point, it is not a supplement. I actually, a lot of times, once my clients have gotten their letter of recommendation briefs over to their recommenders and worked on their resume, I say now it's the application. I don't actually tell them to start in the essay until they have a good draft of the application and the resume, because that is where you prove to the business schools that you have the leadership potential, the skills, the experience, and that you have made the impact that they're looking for. And if they've read your application and resume and they don't see that, it does not matter how great your essays are. You're just not qualified and you're not going to get in. So having said that, what I think is sometimes people flip the order, that they spend all their time on the essays, and to your point, they think the application and the resume are an afterthought. So the Stanford application is really massive. It's got 6 job descriptions, 8 extracurriculars, awards, blah, blah, blah. But most importantly is it has 4 short answer questions that are each of them a mini essay. The first one is they ask you to talk about your background and how that has led to certain choices or decisions you've made. And keep in mind, this is the first thing they're going to read. When they pick this application up, they see this first. So just have that in the back of your head when you think about how important it is. You have 200 words to either make a good first impression or leave them bored or make a terrible first impression. And then at the end of the Stanford application, they have 3 questions where they ask you to talk about your impact. And they are literally saying to you, this is the most important thing that we care about, is showing the impact you've had on organizations you're involved in. Tell us your 3 best examples of when you've done this. And this is where it's kind of make or break. You either have 3 really good examples that make them go, wow, or you don't. What is also incredibly important and incredibly difficult is conveying what was the challenge, what was the impact, what was the context, why did this matter, why is what you did different than what other people would have done in a way that moved the needle significantly in the positive direction. You have to capture what you did that was different and that made you stand out, and then what the impact was that made it such an impressive accomplishment. The next thing I just want to briefly touch on is the resume, because I think also there are people like, oh, well, I already have a resume for my job. I'll just polish it off. I'll add a few bullet points onto it and it'll be fine. And once again, you're not looking for a job. You're trying to get into business school. The business school application resume is completely and utterly different. Do not talk about your technical skills. Do not mention the number of computer languages that you speak. Don't use jargon. Don't tell me you know how to do a waterfall analysis. They don't care. They want to know for every single bullet point, what are the skills that you're demonstrating that they're looking for? Your leadership, your ability to communicate with other people, your ability to influence people, your ability to have insights, analysis, problem solving, et cetera, et cetera. And then they also want to know, once again, what is your impact in concrete, specific, tangible ways? So you should basically, you need to go through every single word and every single bullet point and make sure that they're capturing that for you.
Can I just jump in for 1 second, Rachel?
Yeah,
Just,
please.
oh, sorry, Scott, I don't mean to cut you off, but just very quickly, it's so true, and it's such an important piece of it. And in some cases, with the Harvard interview, one of the individuals who's making their assessment at the ultimate moment when you're there, to kind of decide your fate,
Right.
all they have is your resume. And so I once heard someone describe, like a great business school essay, it's a highlight reel of your accomplishments, so it's not just like, you don't just have like, I did that, like a job description. It should not read like a job description. It should not be super technical as if you're applying from banking and then to private equity. Like, it needs to be a totally different animal because it's a totally different audience. And so, the similar to the recommendation is the so what factor. It's like, don't just tell me what you did. Tell me why it mattered. What was the impact of what you did? And if you can't, every bullet should include something that shows that, I was responsible for the and then, which allowed us to, and then you want to connect that. So back to Scott's point around connecting the dots, like, make it easy for them to understand. If they're not, you have to assume that they're not in the sector that you're in. There are folks like us, and maybe they've, a lot of them have been to business school in the programs that you're targeting. So they're aware of all these things, but don't make them work hard. Make it clear, make it, specific to, you were able to, and also talk about other things too that you wouldn't necessarily bring up. Like, were you promoted early? Do you mentor other individuals? Do you coach and teach? And because teaching, it turns out, is one of the key things that helps identify great managers. If you're good at that, the skill sets that kind of, lend you to being someone who would thrive, post MBA. So just wanted to highlight that because that's often an issue.
Scott, do you want to jump in and talk about some things that you might want to avoid too? We've had a conversation. I know that there's lots and lots to talk about, so that everybody knows where to find us after tonight's event. It is being recorded, and we will also make sure that we will tell you where to find the recording if you were unable to be with us at the beginning. So Scott, just a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind talking about what to avoid in round 2. I feel like this is a lightning round. But
sure, yeah,
no,
and I'll be efficient so we can answer some of these many questions we have here. So three things I would say, to pitfalls to avoid. The first would be proactive in your supplemental efforts. And by that, I mean, if you know you have a lower test score than the median for the school, for round two, maybe you go ahead and take the online math class, MBA Math or Math for Managers, UC Berkeley Extension, both great courses. Do that proactively, because the last thing you want to do is be on the wait list in round three, kind of drifting out there, right? So be proactive if you have the time to do so. I think also not establishing school fit equals not getting accepted in round two, right? These schools don't have to kind of take chances or say, oh, that's a cool story, let's try to admit that person. The metaphor I would use was, imagine you go to a speed dating event, right? If you show up halfway through, you still might have good odds of finding somebody that you like, and vice versa, but you need to be really prepared and stay through to the end, right? So you can't just kind of show up and expect something to happen. So I think that's important. And then the other thing I would say would be the too many cooks in the kitchen idea. This happens a lot. It happens with clients, but friends, family, people applying. You can ask too many people to read your essays, right? Find one or two trusted folks that you feel like enhance your writing and enhance your perspective. But the more people you ask, the more uncertain you will be. And there's nothing worse than
Now it is my
hitting submit
turn
and
to
being
put
uncertain.
my head in my hands.
Yes.
All of us do it at different times, and as soon as I see more than one editing on it, I'm like, oh, please do not do that.
And
Right,
the thing I would say, I would leave you all with before we transition maybe to open questions is, you may know someone that got into Harvard or Stanford or Wharton, but they don't know why they got in, right? So it's definitely valuable to, in terms of like asking the experts, working with people that have seen lots of reps and seen what works and doesn't work across the spectrum, rather than the one person that maybe had a great job where the school really couldn't say no. Not a great person to use as your kind of fifth or sixth eyes on your essay.
Rachel, do you want to tell us some pitfalls to avoid for round two?
So I'd say too quickly. First is, remember, round two is due right around the holidays and the vacations. But you might think, oh, I can get it done in a week. I do think, although if you're a really talented writer and really good, you can do that. It is much, much easier to have time to see how all the pieces fit together. Also, your recommenders have to be able to submit on time, and you have to work around their holidays. And also, if you slip from round two to round three, that is very different than slipping from round one to round two.
Karla, anything to avoid?
Yeah, well, there is no round three anymore at Harvard. So you don't want to do that. But just, what other people have said, just reiterating that it is, you want to set earlier deadlines. Ideally, you want to enjoy the holidays. So I usually would say, let's target December 15th to have things, wrapped up so that they can be put on a shelf and then we can look at them again, so that you're not chasing people who are going to be very frustrated with you, and just sending them like the day before Christmas, here's my recommender packet. Yikes, that's not going to be, no one's going to enjoy that. So while they may be able to get it done, is it going to be as enthusiastic as it could be? You want to be strategic. So think about kind of like the different pieces, like other people said, and make sure that you're getting it in at a time that you would want to receive it. That's it.
We have a lot of questions about deferred entry. I know that Scott, are you typing answers to that, or do you want to take those questions?
Yeah,
or how do you?
I'll type those, Judith, because I feel like we can keep this focused on kind of the full time, but I'll answer them for folks. Yeah.
Sure. So if you're a 2-2 or deferred entry, I'd love to answer some of your questions. Somebody had a question about this, which is interesting. Is it to reference conversations with alumni and students in your essays? So is a more narratively interesting essay with no school references better than a narrative with a lot of references to the school itself?
I personally think that you have a limited number of words, and spending time talking about what somebody else told you, it better be great. It better be really important. It better be really relevant. The schools don't care that you've spoken to other people. That it is only and purely for you to find out the information you need to make your essays and your stories better. And I also see another question about connecting with Harvard, Stanford, Wharton alums and students. LinkedIn may be a tough way to go, but sometimes you can reach out to the directors of clubs on the website. You can also attend information sessions, and sometimes they will have panels with students on them, and you can potentially connect with those students afterwards. So that's one way to do that.
And many programs too, to jump in, have ambassadors that are, set up within the program to be, front facing for admissions questions, just like that. So there's many ways. And so, but be creative if you need to be creative. If you want something badly enough, you'll be able to get someone on the phone, and it does not require a lot of work. It will save you a ton of time. It'll make writing the essays much easier. They'll be more specific. And there will be a lot of upside. So it's worth it to spend the time on that. But after you've thought through, what is my strategy? What do I want to do? And then talking to individuals like that to be like, what was it like there? And you can gain a lot of information that will help with your application as well as prepare you for the interview so that you're not cramming all of that in. Like Scott was saying, it is really difficult. It's going to be stressful. You're going to be busy. So if you can front load a lot of that, and even make that a habit, it's not just great for business school, but it's, talking to other folks, staying plugged in, I think is a good habit to get. And it's the one thing that people rarely do, which if I could force them, I would, but it's the work smart versus hard. And nothing, the hard work, it's fine, you can do that, but I prefer working smart. So you should hopefully too. Save time if you can. And this does save a ton of time. And it also helps you assess your fit. What do they like? What do they not like? What surprised them? What did they learn? What did they want to do? What mattered most to them when they were applying to Stanford? And how did that change? How did how do they interact today? And that helps you communicate in those essays what appeals to you, like, oh, I could see myself doing that. And then you have more credibility than someone who's like, I can't wait to rally everyone and give back to the school. Like, this doesn't really mean anything. It's a lot more meaningful when you can show them, I've already been resourceful in doing the work and using my brain to figure out how to connect with these individuals. You can even cold email, the worst thing that'll happen is they don't write you back. Oh, well, so email a few different people. Professors have written back too. So you don't need to engage with those individuals to get in. It just, again, is a really smart way to tick a lot of things off your list and save time.
I know that we are almost out of time, and I want to make sure that everybody knows that this is going to be recorded. It is recorded, I'm sorry, and we are going to be posting it. Everybody that registered for tonight's event will get a link, I believe, so that they can view it afterwards. We're going to just tell you where to find us as well. So if you have additional questions and you want to follow up, we unfortunately weren't able to answer everything that was posted tonight, but we really hope to maintain conversation with you. We offer amazing 30-minute free consultations. We've been some of the best in the business, I've been told. We really want to get to know who you are and to understand more about what's drawing you to apply for the MBA. So we hope that you will join us next week on September 25th, where I will be hosting an event about acing your round 2 apps at CBS, MIT, Kellogg, and Chicago booth. We would love to, again, to have you with a half an hour for a free consult. And then once again, you can see tonight's recording at youtube.com/Fortuna admissions. It was terrific to have everybody with us. So excited to spend the evening with Karla and Scott and Rachel. Terrific colleagues. We're all very eager to get to know you guys as you go through the application process. So please feel free to reach out, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thanks again, everyone.